Hello, listeners. Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network, and I want to take just a quick moment to tell you about another show on our podcast network that I think you'll love. Mission Admissions cuts through the noise in college admissions and recruitment. Host Jeremy Tiers brings a fresh perspective, packing each episode with straight talk advice, tips, and strategies from a mix of pros inside and outside higher ed. One of the things I love most about the show is how Jeremy often brings voices from outside the industry to share perspectives and practices that can be applied to the work that marketers and enrollment professionals like you do every day. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Mission Admissions wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, it's Maya, and welcome to today's episode. Before we start, I want you to take a minute to imagine an orchestra. Yes, an orchestra, where each musician decides to play a different piece of music. The violinists are immersed in a classical piece, while the brass section plays out jazz and the drummers are lost in rock. The result is a mix of sound where the beauty of each genre loses its power in the lack of cohesion. So, this is exactly what happens when an institution's messaging is not aligned and consistent. Instead of a symphony of coordinated efforts, the audience receives mixed messages that can dilute the brand and confuse the mission. So, today we're here to discuss how integrating communications, marketing, and public relations functions can turn that noise into an effective story that resonates with different audiences. And I am joined by two exceptional professionals, Peter Turan and Lisa Slappy. Peter is the lead strategist at ID5, a Baltimore based integrated marketing and communications social design agency. Peter has a proven track record of driving education marketing and institutional branding with his previous role as a vice president of communications and planning at the University of Baltimore. Lisa and I work together at Carroll Community College, where she is the chief communications officer. Lisa brings a wealth of experience in building brand visibility and managing comprehensive communication strategies. This is going to be an exciting episode. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to The Hidden Gem, your go-to podcast that shines a spotlight on the strategic role of marketing and communications in shaping the future of community colleges. I'm your host, Maya Dimishkovich, CMO at Carroll Community College. Every week, I sit down with community college leaders and industry experts to unpack strategies that work. We'll discuss practical insights and success stories to help you elevate your institution's profile and achieve your strategic goals. Tune in to amplify your community college's success, one conversation at a time. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. And let's get started. Lisa and Peter, welcome to the Hidden Gem podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to be here.
I honestly have been looking to this conversation for a few weeks now, not only because I think that integration of marketing communication is a topic that deserves more attention, but also because I'm very curious to hear your perspectives. You come from such varied backgrounds. So, Lisa, you, for example, you come from military, you worked for a federal contract defense company. So, you have a lot of experience in that world. And the job at Carroll Community College, where you work now as a chief communication officer is actually your first higher ed job, which is also exciting because I love talking to people who are new to the industry because you bring a very fresh perspective. So I'm excited to kind of learn more about your view on the integration of marketing communication. And Peter, for you, you have so much experience in higher education. I think it's what, over 13 years of marketing communication for University of Baltimore.
Yes, that's
Is that
correct.
correct?
And now with ID5, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and now you work on the agency side with ID5 as a strategy lead. So you bring this agency perspective and higher ed perspective. And ID5 actually redesigned our website for Carroll a few years back. And last night I was thinking how ironic it is that we picked a local company to design our website and we've never met in person.
It is
Yeah.
the pandemic world and the post-pandemic world, isn't it? And here we are virtually connecting. So there you go.
Yes, exactly. So, what I wanted to start with is talking about the terminology because I think there's a lot of confusion. People use marketing, communication, public relation, ICM, integrate marketing communications, and sometimes they mean one thing, sometimes they don't like quite get it. So, I really want to start with explaining what is marketing, what is communication, what are maybe the overlaps, kind of get your perspective on those terms and how to use them maybe properly, or how do you use them?
Okay. Who do you want to start?
Anyone.
Okay,
Lisa, you
Peter,
want to
you
give it a go?
okay, I will. And I
Yeah.
wanted to add that Maya, I have worked in higher ed. I have been an adjunct faculty at two community colleges off and on for it was probably about 15 years. So I've done adjunct
Okay.
faculty when I was in uniform, and then of course when I retired, but I was adjunct faculty. So seeing the students firsthand, 2 or 3 times a week really brought some perspective when it came to communicating to them because that was, at the front
Right.
line. All right.
Great.
So with that, you asked a question about the differences. I would say some definitions. And so some of them, like communication, I use corporate communications or, organizational communication or, college communications. For me, that is how the corporate communication piece is how the organization shares information internally and externally to audiences. Is how we're going to engage those audiences in a bid to manage brand perception. It to me it covers all the forms of communication that promote the company's messaging. When I think public relations, I think that is a distinct management function because that's going to help establish and maintain those mutual lines of communications, that understanding, that acceptance, that cooperations between the college and its public. And of course, PR involves the management of those problems, those issues, those concerns, and it does help management stay abreast of public opinion. So, and when I think of marketing to me, from my experience and marketers that I deal with, is the activities associated with buying, advertising, distributing, or selling a product or service. So when we think about the marketing piece, and there's more to it, it's communicating that. So marketing, what's the best advertising marketing channel for a specific customer, for a specific client? So there, and I know there's some confusion when it comes to marketing, communications, PR, but at the core it's about telling a story. I think telling a story for different goals. So treating marketing departments as separate entities limits communication and reduces operational efficiency for what we're trying to do at Carroll Community College. So those are some of the ideas that I have for those three. They're distinct. They have different arms and different goals, but when we all come together to promote and support our strategic priorities, all of them have a place. But limiting the confusion of what each arm is saying.
I agree with so much of what Lisa says. And Maya, I think it is such a smart question to begin with because, as we all know, all disciplines, all professions sometimes fall into jargon. And especially when
Mhm.
we meet with a new client partner, or I'm sure with you across the college, people are using these terms differently. You talked about that sort of overlap and sort of Venn diagram. I almost think of it almost more like a circus tent, but I think communications is the big top here. Everything is about communicating. Marketing, and this is painting in broad strokes, marketing I consider is often what you do when you pay for messaging. Public relations, I agree with Lisa, is often for specific outreach, and it often goes from the college to your publics. It can often be for either, and I don't want to, it's can be positive or negative. Sometimes it's crisis management, but also for higher education, it may be engaging with your community partners, engaging with your state funders to promote a particular initiative. But I want to really seize on something that Lisa said, and the more I work in this fascinating and evolving field, the more I lean on the word of storytelling, telling your story. And sometimes to simplify it in that way, all of those components are about telling the story. So, what is Carroll Community College today? What does it want to be? What does your support or engagement help it to be? What does it mean to be a student at Carroll? All of those things, whether it's in a marketing phase or communication or even PR, is about telling a story. So I like to sort of simplify that so that we don't get lost in the jargon.
I think this is very helpful. So it is in a way telling a story using different channels of communication to different audiences. So it's the same story, but just how we tell
Hmm.
it might vary slightly because of who we are talking to, who we are trying to tell the story. So I think this is very helpful to kind of set the stage for us to be on the same page. So we have the definitions in place. And now let's talk a little bit about this integration piece. So I am a very visual person. So for me, having analogies and really helps reinforce
Hmm.
the idea of integration. And I know each of you has your own analogy. So I know, Lisa, you have a chair analogy that I think would be so helpful for our listeners to hear about because it really does reinforces why the integration is important. Do you want to start there?
Yes, I can start there. So what I have, and as I've learned and talked to other communications, PR, marketing professionals, thinking about how to pull this together. Now, an integrated communications department doesn't work for everyone. Let me be clear. It depends on what's going on in your college or in your organization or your business. But for us, because we know that miscommunication can happen. We have limited resources, and we're trying to be conscious of the talent that we have also, as well as the resources. So I came up with a chair with four legs and then four um, stems in the back. So each leg represents a part of communication. So one leg I have as external communications, another leg I have as internal communication, another leg I have as community relations, and another leg is marketing. So it's four legs to this chair. And then on the base, kind of right around the chair, it's like we speak with one voice and we have target audiences. And then the seat, what you sit on, I have the integration, which is communications, PR, and marketing. And then the back has four areas. And for that, I have the executive team, I have stakeholders, I have students, and I have employees. And then at the top of the back, I have the board of trustees, who kind of is who we go to get approval for everything. So I'm trying to integrate it so everyone can understand when it comes to us pulling everything together. And each piece has, we're all looking at our audiences that we're all talking to, but how we do it, which is the four legs. And one voice is so important in the target audiences. One voice is a challenge sometimes because of what may be going on.
I love this analogy, Peter. What do you think about the chair?
I love the chair. I want to sit in it. It's great, and I love that idea of visualization. And it's so interesting because and listeners, Lisa and I have not prepared this before, but although my visualization is somewhat different, it does have that idea of supports. So you've got that chair, but we think of it more as a building, and almost if you can think of a very simple if you think of those Greek kind of structures that have a base and a pillar and a dome. So that's our picture, our visual picture. At the base is our brand. And we put it there because it is the foundation. You know, you can't build a building without a solid foundation. So at the bottom of this visualization is your brand. Without that, none of the other elements are going to be functional. And those
Mm-hmm.
three pillars that we talk about, the first pillar is traffic, and that is the interest that you generate in however you're communicating, but specifically if you're talking about marketing, and let's just use college recruitment campaign, traffic is what you're doing to generate interest. That second pillar is something we label destination, and destination can be when you invite people to your campus, when you send a prospect to a landing page, when you invite students to an open house. Destination is a place, and you'll notice there that destination is very specific for specific audiences. Gone are the days when you just send someone to a website homepage and hope they find their way. The third
Mm-hmm.
pillar, which is incredibly important, is what we call nurture, which is communications in this age of overwhelming communications. You can't be one and done, and you can't communicate in the same way to the same audience over and over again. Where is someone in their relationship to Carroll? And so nurture is incredibly important. And then on the top of that, in that dome, is what we call integrated marketing, which is
Mm-hmm.
bringing all of those elements together, starting with brand, and then those pillars are really your tactics. And then the other thing, this goes a little bit back to our first conversation about labels, is that integrated marketing really means consistency across whatever channel you are communicating with your audience. And that is very broad. It's the marketing messages you send out. It's the address that your president gives to local stakeholders. It's all of those messages need to be integrated in order for this dome and this structure to be solid. So interesting, two different visualizations, but very much that sense
Mm-hmm.
of pillars and structure.
Lisa, your analogy, your framework, the chair, it clearly demonstrates that if one leg is not working or if not doing a great job, then the whole chair falls apart. And then, Peter, for you, I really like the idea that you start with your brand. Before you try to do any advertising, any messaging creation, you need to really understand who you are, what your target audience is, ensure you have the place to send them, that your website is robust and your campus is welcoming, as well as you know how to nurture them. Maybe you have an email campaign or you have a robust social media where they can follow you and you can nurture that relationship. And only then you start thinking about how do you integrate, because you need to have this foundation in place. Excellent analogies. Both of you mentioned the importance of messaging and consistency and how it might be difficult and challenging depending on what's happening at the institution. So how, from your perspective, do you ensure this consistency? Any ideas?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? It's the challenge, and Lisa pointed out, and it's certainly true in working with different partners, is that the culture of every institution is unique, but higher education, by its very structure, um, can sometimes silo us, right? We have academic departments. We have, and those can be very different. The needs of your business majors or faculty members or department chairs may be very different from your art and design, and they both want their own thing, right? But I think the
Mm-hmm.
consistency, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, in detail, and love to hear your perspective, Lisa. But that first of all, and it goes back to that that image, is that hopefully, and you have to all be rooted in that brand. You have to be able to see yourself in that brand somewhere. One way that consistency can happen is, and this is a bit more tactical, is that we engage our colleagues in the formation and creation of messages. We tell their stories authentically. We make sure that our brand is specific, is distinctive enough, but that it incorporates authentically who we are. And the other thing, once we start getting into actual campaigns that we find very successful, is you share outcomes. But also, we have a real advantage in higher education. You interact with your target audience every day. Your students are there, your faculty are there. And so, not to overdo it, but gathering data from both the campaigns you have in market, but also surveying your students or prospective students, people will adhere to, number one, things that are successful, but two, it's hard to argue with data. So when we can say, here's the message about Carroll that resonates most with our audiences because we've got data to prove it, that ensures that
Mm-hmm.
people start to say, okay, we're getting on this bus. And so consistency is a challenge, but it's incredibly important because in that, again, crowded marketplace, you have to have a defined message that is distinct, and people start to recognize it as Carol.
I absolutely agree with Peter. I think starting with the internal audience, because that's our bread and butter. Because it's okay if marketing says it or communication says it, but when faculty staff say it, whatever it is, and they take it out because they work there, they live there. And I think one of the things I've said before is sometimes our internal audience is overlooked, or they may get the information last, and they are our primary audience because the messages, they live it and breathe it. They're working there, they're the ones that are making it happen. And what happens is when they say it, they take it out to our stakeholders, to our external audience, and they're very authentic. They can tell the story in their own terms. So I believe that ensuring that our internal audience, that's one way to ensure consistency. And of course, leadership. So in leadership, we're tend to make decisions when it comes to everything about the school, about the college, but now making sure that our internal and our external audience know. But make sure we tell our internal audience first, get their feedback, and then they go out there, like I said, and say some of the things that we want them to say or do because they're living it and they believe in the brand.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news. I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times bestselling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
Mm-hmm. These are excellent points. I know at Carroll, for example, to kind of help this consistency, we do a lot of workshops and we do train our faculty and staff on what is the brand, what visuals they should be using and not using. And another thing we do is when the new faculty or staff is hired, we ask them to stop by marketing so they get to know who we are. And we can tell them that if they have any questions about messaging, about the visuals, they can reach out to us for help. And we always ask them to, if it's your first time doing it, just send it to us. We'll, help you navigate it, help you figure it out, because we don't want anything that's not consistent to be in the marketplace.
What a great thing to do is to welcome your new colleagues with that message. That's such a smart thing to do, and also having that written out brand platform and guidelines, because we can sometimes forget that our colleagues are not often marketing and communication specialists. You would want me to do an
Right.
engineering for your college, so how can we expect these folks to do our marketing?
Exactly. And it sounds like to ensure consistency, you need to be consistent yourself. And I'm speaking about marketing communications. We need to be consistently training, helping, educating, reinforcing, because, like you said, it's not their full time job. It's not what they live and breathe on a regular basis. So we are there to kind of help them, help us
All right.
communicate our story and tell our story. Another thing I think that's very important, and especially in order for us to demonstrate the importance and the impact integration of marketing communication can have on the institution itself, is to align what we do with our mission and our strategic goals. So the leadership clearly sees what we do, how we do it, and how it impacts the bottom line. So, do you have any suggestions there on how to do it, how to communicate it, any best practices?
Okay, so for us at Carroll, one of the things, and I've said this before, is that I would say like 4 or 5 months into being the chief communications officer, I saw marketing was in one part of the college and communications was in another. And I understood that, okay, market is doing some things and we that does not necessarily align with some of the conversations we're having on the executive team about focus of messages or focus of areas that we need to be on, because it was a disconnect. um, and understanding that, and then understanding some of the limited resources that we have, that we're not going to add more to marketing, we're not going to add a whole lot more people and resources to com, so how can we pull this together so that we can all do this? um, so with that in mind, I was like, all right, we find out what we need to do to integrate this, and that's what we're doing now. So it's going to, we're integrating its communications, public relations, and marketing. And with that, I think it'll give us a better idea. We can speak with one voice. Being on the executive team, I'm sitting at the table. That was very important, is having a seat at the table, um, and understanding, okay, the decisions that we're making, and then how it's going to affect everything, marketing, academics, staff, all of that. And then, okay, how can we communicate some of these things? Because there may be some things that I was working on, or marketing was working on, that we may need to shift because of things that I know they're coming up or that are happening. This makes it so much easier to pivot it when we need to, or to emphasize some things that we are already emphasizing, but now take them to the next level. So that those are the things that make a difference. And then we can come up with the strategies of, all right, have our meeting, have my meeting with the comms, PR, and marketing department, and say, okay, these are the things I know we need to focus on for the next blah, blah, blah. And let me tell you why and how it's going to have an impact on us, as well as internal and external audiences.
Peter, do you have anything to add?
Maybe reinforce is, and it's great to hear that Lisa is a member of the executive committee, because that was my first talking or recommendation here, is that marketing needs to be at the table. In the Hamilton area, we say, I'm in the room where it happens, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
without that seat at the table, there can be disconnect. I think that also means when there is strategic planning happening at the college, that marketing is one of the major areas that is covered in that. And just going back to that marketer at the executive team, we take that for granted perhaps now, But 20 years ago, that really wasn't often the case. And as Lisa said, we often can have admissions and marketing and communications and public relations and alumni outreach at different places. So coordination there. The other thing that I was struck by what Lisa said, and we totally agree, we often focus on the outputs of our marketing efforts, right? We want more students, we want more funding, we want something. It's important to bring to leadership's attention what the inputs are. And Lisa touched on those. Number one, like it or not, it's budget. So we can level our expectations and our understanding of what's possible by understanding the input of our financial resourcing. And that's going to shift, from good times to better times to not so good times. The other is time. What is the timing of any specific initiative? We're lucky in the academic calendar, we have recruitment cycles and we have other, but what is your timeline? How will you be judged? How will success be judged by what period of time? And then third, what are your actual goals? What are you trying to achieve? And the goals can't simply be more or better. They
Mm-hmm.
need to be quantifiable and qualitative. But so those inputs, I think, can sometimes get overlooked in the focus on the outcomes that we want. But bringing those into the leadership conversation can help ensure common understanding.
And the other part of like having a seat at the table, we get to talk about the public opinion of the college. That's the communications piece, and the public relations piece about, media, as well as getting students. So it's all of it combined. It's not, and the other thing is not just marketing, not just public relations, not just, so that again gets away from the silos. It's like, no, let's talk about the entire communications, PR, and marketing piece as a whole and how this fits in and what we can do. Because one of the things, we hear is marketing, marketing, marketing. And what
Right.
has happened is people have put everything into marketing. They just label it marketing and it's not marketing. Like you said, those they mix up all the terms and just call, like some would just call it all comms, some would call it all marketing. It's like, oh, that's not marketing, oh, that's not comms. So educating just the leadership as well as the college staff and faculty on the differences, but how we all work together. That's very important too.
That's such a good point. And can we often say, the way that someone answers the phone in your financial aid office is communications, right? Because think of your own experience. You're on hold with your internet provider, and that's your perception of that brand. So everyone has a piece in this. So absolutely and so consistency and ownership is not just what we have in our paid media, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this. Do you have any additional maybe examples of some campaigns or maybe colleges who are doing a great job with the integration piece and the results they were able to achieve? Or maybe it's from your past experiences, Lisa, where you saw something that was a great integrated campaign that achieved great results.
Well, for me, because I came from a different background, it was a, federal contracting with the, let's say, with an NFL team. Again, it's a lot different because the teams are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
We have more money. We have more, so it's kind of hard to change that to what we're doing at the college. But some of the basic things were we were able to streamline outreach efforts. We were able to collaborate with marketing, PR, comms. We were able to align our messages for each of the audiences because we were able to, lay out a calendar and a schedule. We had everything, laid out that made a difference. And the meetings, I know most of us don't like meetings, but the meetings that we had with everyone, marketing, PR, comms, the stories that we were telling, not just the short stories and short videos, but the pieces that were features, which is, in the newspaper or the magazines. That was important. Some of the ads, when and where they were placed, it all lined up that showed the integrated approach worked for this particular campaign of showing who this contractor was and what they do and how they fit in, and then the people who benefited from this integration. So that's one great example that worked.
There's a couple of examples that do come to mind, and it's interesting. What they have in common is authenticity. And we go back almost to when we started about storytelling. You can tell all sorts of stories, right? But they've got to be true. They've got to be authentic. Because if I hear one thing in your marketing message and I experience something else when I go to visit your campus, or I try to enroll, or any of those situations, there's a disconnect. And so I'm almost hesitant to point out specific campaigns, because sometimes we get stuck on a really good tagline, or we get stuck on the name. And I think the more critical component is, we already talked about authenticity, but I mean, consistency, but is the authenticity. We are working with a partner in a community college in Colorado right now, and they have a successful campaign because it resonates with current students, it resonates with their faculty, it has excited their alumni. It has excited, as community partner colleges do have that wonderful relationships with their surrounding communities. And so it's, yes, they've executed it well, but it was built on that foundation of brand that resonated authentically to each of those audiences. And I'll go against a bit of what I said. I will say, in a past life, I was at the University of Baltimore, and we were growing and changing. And for many years, we had a foundational, it was a tagline, but it was really a brand position about centered around the concept of knowledge that works. This idea, a little bit before everyone is on that bandwagon, about real world learning. And the success of that, apart from the enrollment successes we have, and I remember, as a little bit of a funny story, that, as often happens, there was a student meeting where they were upset about something, and one of the students said, we're about knowledge that works, and you're not doing that. I thought that was the best, the best confirmation of a good campaign, because here were students embracing this and saying, you got to live up to this. This is who we are. And so, when your brand ambassadors, when your community can become your brand ambassadors, that's when you are building real equity in the marketplace, because they will be the best storytellers that money can buy.
Absolutely, I agree, and it's somewhat free because of, not necessarily, I would say, the brand, the reputation of the college that the college has built over the years. Because it's just not starting happening now, and being authentic, it's been happening over the years, but building on that, those partnerships, those stakeholders that we have that talk on behalf of us, even when we're not in the room, that say things that we're doing, those first generation graduates, those students who've gone on to do great and wonderful things, and point back to, it all started when I attended this community college, because the faculty and staff there took their time with me. It's those stories that make the difference, and those experiences that you really can't buy that, because it's something that the students or faculty feel inside, that I enjoy working here because, and they fill in the blank. Those are the things that part of the communications. Marketing can't do that. Communication, that is something that's within the heart that the institution has built and that we're standing on.
Yeah, these are excellent examples. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know we covered a lot. We talked a lot about the benefits, what marketing and communication, the integration piece, and collaboration. Anything else that we didn't talk about that you feel is important to add to this conversation?
I would say that three points that come to mind for integrating comms, PR, and marketing at our campus is, it's going to help us tell our story better. That's one thing. And I think the other thing is, we'll be able to capitalize on all the types of content that's available for each of those areas. And then it'll help us align distinct goals through collaboration. And once we get to that point, that's going to make a world of difference in how we communicate, who we communicate to. And then, of course, uh, all of those entities, a trusted partner rooted in understanding, is going to create a measurable narrative for all of us. So I think that this arrangement, like I said, it's not a one size fits all, but depending on, your college and what's going on, looking at all of your resources, and we know resources are limited. No one's
Mhm.
budget is huge, and you can just constantly throw a lot of people and resources at it. So this is just one way in which you can integrate and collaborate and use it more effective and efficiently.
Yeah, I think efficiency is a key to many community colleges. So finding those efficiencies and scaling it is
And
important.
that's what I mean. Consistency. One of the values is maximizing your budget, right? I mean, that's
Hmm.
critical. As is the only things I would add is, and this is the digital world helps us with this, but is to continue to monitor performance. And that can be very powerful, both in bringing people along on campus, but in maximizing what you're doing. You can do A B testing with your emails, you can do A B testing with online messaging, and you can manage that much like you manage a stock portfolio by resourcing what works and pulling back from what doesn't. One other thing, too, that often comes up is for us to remember that we are not our audience. And to always know that what we think is important is less valuable than what our audience thinks is important. Just again, anecdotally, when I meet with a college president for the first time, I can almost tell how things are going to go. The savvy presidents will say, "I'm not I'm no longer a college student. I don't know so I'm going to trust my marketing team to do that research and tell our story versus someone who says, here's who we are and here's what I want you to say." And so it's not that you don't want that president's strong leadership and articulation of that, but an understanding of what will resonate with our audience may not be what I think. And that's why listening to your audience and continually evolving as they do is so critically important.
Yeah. And unfortunately or fortunately, it's evolving all the time. So, again, consistently listening, consistently staying in touch, and collecting feedback is crucial for communication and marketing. Um, I think it was an insightful discussion, and I thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And I'm sure our listeners will find it very useful. I'm sure very soon we'll be seeing a lot of chairs and a lot of buildings on the internet where people are trying to use those analogies to explain the integration. And I hope they do, because these analogies are very powerful, especially for people who need to visualize the integration. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
It was
inviting me. I want
exciting.
some of Lisa's chairs in my building. So there you go.
I need some, and I need your building to put over the
Okay.
chairs so we're
I think
covered.
we've I think we've got it made here.
Think so too.
And that's a wrap of today's episode. From our discussion today, I hope you take away the critical importance of unified messaging across all platforms, the power of storytelling in building a brand's identity, and the transformative role that strategic communication plays in enhancing the visibility and reputation of educational institutions. I hope this conversation has not only informed but also inspired you to consider the potential of integrate Marcomm strategies at your community college. With that, let's continue amplifying the success of community colleges together, one conversation at a time. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable. Let's keep this conversation going on LinkedIn at Maya Dimishkovich. I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, and suggestions for what you'd like to see next on this podcast. Remember, by tuning in to the Hidden Gem, you're not just listening to a podcast, you are joining a movement of amplifying community colleges' success. Don't miss out. Subscribe to this podcast and notifications about our future episodes. Share it with your colleagues and college leaders to help make our colleges stand out. Together, let's make an impact. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you will like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher education technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Jenny Fowler, Eddie Francis, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.